Good morning, all. The end of summer. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. That was said by Seneca the Younger over 2,000 years ago. He was a philosopher in ancient Rome. One ending is always the beginning of something else. And so as summer comes to a close, we gather our memories and we move into a time of settling in and perhaps of releasing. And in Florida, as well as in many other parts of the country, we are fairly ready to release the heat of the summer. I think that may be an adult thing. Can you recall how you felt at the end of summer when you were a kid? In my family, we had a ritual. I grew up in northwestern Indiana, and the end of the summer was the time of the county fair. And all of us who were in the 4-H club would get our knitting or our baking, all of our entries together and ready for this big event. And my family would head out of town about this time. My father was heavily affected by pollen. And in the countryside where we lived, we had this thing called ragweed, and it was abundant. And so the 2 weeks before the end of the summer, we would head off to Upper Peninsula, Michigan, usually accompanied by aunts and uncles and family friends and some of my cousins. And my dad would fish to his heart's content. And my little sister and I, along with whatever cousins were at hand, spent our days exploring the woods, making bracelets out of vines and bouquets out of whatever flowers we could find. Always trying to walk quietly in the woods like the Native Americans. But we never succeeded. And it was a magical time. It was a time of watermelon and corn on the cob and homemade ice cream and hot dogs and eating at picnic tables and then just hosing everything and all of us kids off. It was wonderful, this tradition that we had. And because I was a geek before the word was widely used, I looked forward to being back in school and seeing my friends. You know, living in the country didn't afford that many opportunities for us to get together, for we lived miles and miles apart. So yes, I was one of those kids. I liked school. So my end of the summer didn't involve as much angst or anguish or trepidation as perhaps other kids might experience. But that was just me. What was it like for you? Can you recall? What is it like for you now, this end of the summer? And what might be the biggest difference for you now than when you were a kid? Might it be the heat, or the tourist, or the heat, or the rain, the storms, or the heat? I never once remember as a kid wishing it wasn't so hot. You know, it's a big deal now. But this weekend is unofficially the end of summer, Labor Day weekend. And again, as a kid, that was the mark of the beginning of the school year. Now, our grandchildren have been in school for 3 weeks already, so things change. But Labor Day weekend always meant picnics and barbecues and celebrations. And I hope that you have had and still have wonderful plans for this holiday weekend. Labor Day always falls on the first Monday in September. It's an official federal holiday, and it was established in 1894. It's also a way for us to remember the men and the women that fought for the rights of workers in the late labor movement in the late 19th century. And today we can celebrate the social and economic achievements of American workers. So how else can this be meaningful for us here in this church community or wherever we might be today? How does the end of the summer apply to us? Well, I find for myself as an adult, that I might have a harder time with the end of some things. I seem to be moved to emotions so much more quickly. I cry easily. Perhaps this is more pronounced now, or maybe this is just always the way I've been. I think maybe I've always had a hard time with endings. No matter who we're taking to the airport, leaving us, I feel tears forming, not only with my children, but when we take Denny's children to the airport as well. I remember taking Nemo to the airport in Key West and getting teary, and I had only known him for a week. And I don't consider this really altogether a bad thing. It can be disconcerting at times. There's times when I am leaving in the plane from Key West and I get teary, and my seatmate might look at me and smile, leaving the kids. Nope, I say I'm leaving my church family for a while. They might not get it, but I get it. We recently had dear friends from Texas visiting us here for a couple of days, and yep, there I was again in the driveway, teary. Tears starting to form in my eyes as they pulled out the driveway. I'm glad for that. I'm glad that I allow myself to experience such joy and connection that when that connection is about to end, at least in person and for the time being, there's some measure of feelings of loss, however fleeting. I believe that's one of the gifts of being human, that desire for connection and that feeling of loss when that connection shifts, is adapted somehow, or that connection is lost completely. Now, we can struggle with the end of many things, the end of jobs, positions, careers, the end of relationships, the end of marriages, the end of friendships. Even as children, we struggle with the end of things. We've all heard, and most of us have experienced, the terrible twos. It's that little one who's releasing their babyhood, but they're not quite understanding what's going on and they can't express their feelings. And teenagers go through something quite similar. They're not quite children anymore, but they're not adults. It's the end of one thing and the beginning of another. To a lesser degree, we might struggle with the end of vacations. One of my favorite vacation places when my children were younger was a remote motel with kitchenettes called the Pearl. It was directly on the Gulf of Mexico near Venice, Florida, Venice Beach. But because it was more in a residential area, it was really, really remote. We could go out on the beach and not see anyone else all day. And you can probably still find claw marks on that building because I never wanted to leave. I never wanted our time there to end. Even classes we take, we don't want them to end. Sometimes seasons, we're enjoying the fall and we're not ready for winter. But this ready or not readiness for things to end is a quality unique to humanity. And it can be the source of much suffering if we let it. So let's go back to that quote by Seneca the Younger. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. One ending is always the beginning of something else. And reminding ourselves of that fact, of the very natural progression, reduces our tendency to cling, to grasp, or to fear. For whenever we examine a reaction or an emotion, we can ask ourselves, is this love? Is that what I'm feeling right now? Is it love? Because if it isn't love, it's fear. Fear revealing itself in some other form. So what is fear? F-E-A-R. It's false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. So once we obtain our answer, is this love or is this fear? And the answer is fear. We can delve deeper. What is false that I am accepting as real or absolute? There will be another There will never be another summer like this one. Well, that's absolutely true. And we can have different ones, new ones, precious ones still. I miss them, whoever they are, terribly. Again, that's true. And how wonderful that they are or were part of your life. What a blessing. What a gift. I don't know when I'll see them again. Perhaps not. That does not take away at all from this time. It might even make it more precious to you. And I don't want this vacation, this experience, this class, this connection to end. It doesn't really. Every time you think about it, every time you remember or you share the experience, you relive it. Because our brains cannot tell the difference between remembering an experience or the actual experience itself. We can look at a photo and it evokes the same feeling communicated to our brain as when we were there in person. Those same feel-good chemicals are released into our system. Those memories, those imprints on our brain are tremendous gifts we give ourselves when we allow ourselves the luxury of fully remembering. That way, nothing is ever lost. No person, no experience, no summer. From the Hebrew scriptures this morning, we're looking at Isaiah. And Isaiah says, "Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars, the one who leads forth their host by number. He calls them all by name, by the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing." We are being pointed to creation, the power, the presence of the divine. We are being pointed to the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, or as we hold in unity, mind, idea, expression. For you are a creator. I am a creator. We are each creators, all of us. We are creators of the world in which we live through that presence within us. So let us turn away from distractions and realize the comfort of the ever-present divine. We have no reason to question the one presence and the one power. God is, and God will keep us in perfect peace, according to Isaiah. Perfect peace in shalom. To be in shalom is to be well and happy, friendly, healthy, and prosperous. To be whole or complete. So when we shift our focus from the world and turn inward, we realize this shalom, this perfect peace. Nothing is ever lost, and we are not forgotten. We are living in the heart of God. Those are lyrics from J.D. Martin and Jan Garrett. Nothing is ever lost, and we are not forgotten. We are living in the heart of God. Even as we come to the end of something, nothing is ever lost. We needn't grasp nor cling. The Buddhists say that grasping is suffering, not life. Life is not suffering, but the idealistic grasping of how we think life should be is the root of our suffering. Desire in itself is not bad. We may desire to grow spiritually, to have a closer relationship with our family. We may have the desire to express ourselves creatively, the desire to live in peace, the desire to know God more. Grasping and wanting are two of the most painful aspects of desire. And we can recognize them. We can name them for what they are and take away their power, like pulling a plug from an outlet or popping a balloon. Just as I may get teary when departing from someone or a situation which brings me great joy, I do not allow myself to turn my tears into grasping or despair. And yes, it can be sobering. It's hard when it's following an especially lighthearted and deeply connected time. But there is also freedom to be found. The freedom to let go, to release, to set free any unhealthy desire of clinging, turning that desire into wings of freedom, planting that love, imprinting that experience on our heart, allowing the connection to imprint itself fully and deeply, taking root and growing, encouraging us to connect with others in meaningful ways, knowing the beauty, knowing the power, knowing the love that is everywhere present. The end of one thing is yet the beginning of another. And it may seem bittersweet, a term that describes something that's both happy and sad at the same time. And nostalgia can leave us with a sense of longing for what was. And yet, we have the power to choose happiness of having had that experience, or to choose sadness for no longer having it. It's simple, not always easy. The choice is simple. The living it is not the easy part. It may be simple to choose gratitude. It's not always easy to move past the feelings of loss. The end of summer, the end of something special. Both are the beginning of something new. And we can get behind the newness. We can celebrate making different, exciting, and perhaps new to us choices. We can expand our horizons. We can test our limits. We can find our growing edges and choose to push them outwards. We can refuse to be defined by who we have been and rather seek to be who we came here to be in all its glory, surprising even ourselves with the depth of our being. We can choose not to fear endings. Also, not to delay nor hurry them, but to allow the natural progression to unveil itself, to unfold itself, to manifest in divine timing. The natural cycles of our life are to be celebrated, all of them. A Hindu may honor the time of a loved one's passing as the moment their soul lives on, taking on a new body. It's known as the transmigration of souls. One life ends and another begins. Of course, they mourn their loss, but they are also uplifted by the knowledge that their loved one lives on in a new little one, ready to take on life and explore it. We can adapt that perspective for the ending of all things, the end of anything special to us. Honor it for what it has been, and as a time of a new beginning. The end of summer, yes, and the beginning of a new season, a new something. It is always a choice how we hold the experience. And when we are ready, we bless it, we release it, and we cherish its memory, ready for the beginning of something new and quite wonderful. Of this we can be sure. And so it is. And so it is.